Moving out when I became 20, I left my parents' house because it was intolerable. My name is Ethan, and I am currently 22 years old. They acted as though everything I owned belonged to them as well. Frequently gave preference to my younger siblings, and utilized me as unpaid labor. When I moved out, my father, Mark, told me to remain away and not let the door hit me on my way out. I had been working at the same full-time job for almost 4 years, and I rented the tiniest and most economical apartment I could locate. Not even a month had passed when my parents, Mark and Emily, began phoning me to beg me to come back because someone else needed to look after my brothers. I said no, enjoying my newfound independence. Eventually, my father insisted that family should come before personal independence, and made me move back and pay them rent. I responded that for once I was living for me and that my life mattered too. We didn't talk for months after he said, "Let's see how long you last without us." I'm not sure what he was expecting, but I got along just fine without him. My family and I gradually began to patch things up once they came to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to return on my knees. They clearly found it difficult to accept that I now controlled the situation rather than them. Even though the two closest to me were in their late teens, they nevertheless pleaded with me from time to time to watch my youngest siblings, since they had always thrown the babysitting load on me. My parents' refusal to take on the responsibility seemed hypocritical. They gaslighted me when I brought this up, and then they once more were silent for months. In the end, it was them who returned to seek my assistance. I recently purchased a used gaming console, but I was only able to afford the single game that was included. My mother requested me to keep my two youngest siblings for a bit one Saturday. I was left alone with them in my tiny apartment all day after she essentially pushed them inside and walked off. I contacted my mom and insisted that she come grab the kids, which is why she didn't come back until after 10 o'clock. She didn't like that I interrupted her enjoyment. I warned her that I would no longer watch my siblings all day unless she paid me, and that if she left them outdoors the next time, I would call the police and wouldn't even open the door. I discovered my gaming console was gone the following morning. I thought one of my siblings had taken it, so I contacted my parents. My mom said it could wait, as my youngest sibling was playing on it, and she didn't have the heart to take it away. Even though I stated I would come over right soon to retrieve it, I claimed that it had been stolen without my consent and that I would be picking it up as fast as I could. I rode my bike to their house. My sibling was crying when I got there since they were missing the charger and the console's battery had died. When I asked for it back, my father took it and told me I could have it back if I helped out more with my siblings. I wasn't bluffing when I informed him that I would call the cops if he wanted to play that game. He refused to back down until I began making phone calls. My mother shouted, "Hold on!" I swiftly reclaimed the console from my father. She claimed it wasn't worth having the cops come on them, but he called her a traitor and insisted she give it back to him rather than to me. I assured them before I left that I would not think twice about calling the police if this occurred again. They could purchase their own gaming console if they truly wanted one for my siblings. My father, Mark, screamed that I couldn't treat him in such a disrespectful manner. I retorted that I'm an adult, but he's never bothered to treat me with any respect, and I'd had enough. He then yelled at me to turn around and face him as I left. At the moment, they are once again silent. I once received a text from my mom, Emily, pleading with me to continue watching my siblings, since I wasn't doing it for free anymore, especially after they stole from me and attempted to prevent me from reclaiming my property. I told her that if she really wanted me to babysit, she could pay me, but I would only accept the money up front. I am not their property. They can either adjust or become disoriented since I am an adult with a place of my own and a life of my own. Since that text exchange more than a week ago, none of them have gotten in touch with me, which is okay. They are capable of handling their own mess. Update. It's unbelievable that I completely forgot about this account for almost a year, but I happened to stumble upon my original post when browsing Reddit videos online. I've returned to provide an update after realizing that I completely neglected to do so toward the end. There will be some light fighting and police intervention. I thought I'd bring it up, even though I'm not sure if that counts as a trigger warning. I recently wrote about my parents' refusal to return my gaming console after one of my siblings stole it. As some of you may be aware, if my parents ever dropped my younger siblings off at my door without asking again, a lot of commentators advised contacting the police or CPS. I waited and waited. But it had been around 3 months since my mother had last called, and I wouldn't watch my siblings for free. Then it came at last when my parents unexpectedly called to ask me to watch the kids. They pretended as if the previous console incident had never occurred. I informed them that it had to be a day when I was off from work and that I would not babysit unless they paid me. I no longer had Saturdays off due to a change in my schedule, since they most frequently asked me to babysit on Saturdays. I really asked my boss for it, additionally. It was more cost-effective for me to take on an additional shift as usual. My dad became enraged and told me to man up and lend a hand as he usually promised to do at my age. I pointed out that he should stop acting as though he controlled me and that, in a technical sense, I was manning up for myself and my own life. However, he dumped a lot of his duties on me and worked on Saturdays so he could forget about them. I was finished with their demands as far as I was concerned. My mother grabbed the phone away from him after he began screaming into it. Since Sunday is my sole day off, I stated that I could only watch on Sundays and that I would only do so if I was paid $40. And my siblings' lunches, dinners, and snacks were prepared in advance since feeding them isn't my responsibility. I wasn't going to waste my money on it. I also made it plain that I would call the police to retrieve anything that was taken from me, such as my console the previous time it was stolen. To make it easy for the authorities to verify that it is mine, I kept the receipt from the time I purchased it and wrote down the serial numbers. My mother became enraged and began to curse like a sailor who had just lost a tooth before she discovered I wasn't answering and began insisting I say anything. I let her vent while essentially ignoring the phone. My demands were Sundays only, $40, and prepackaged food, or else they could forget about it. I said to her and my father on the other end of the line. There was a moment of astonished quiet. My mother then blasted me once again, claiming that my younger siblings, who are 13 and 16 years old, had to take over for me because I was no longer there, and they needed a vacation. "Oh, like how you guys gave me breaks?" I asked, laughing as never before. My mother attempted to claim that because I was the eldest child, things were different. I explained to her that it wasn't different at all. I had lost out on a lot of my youth because they had parentified me. It is hypocritical of them to pretend as though I should take over again now that I am living on my own without them. The 2 teens living with them are capable of doing anything I used to do. My mother went into victim mode and said that my adolescent siblings were disobedient and unheard since I was too busy living my life. I informed her that their issues weren't mine and that they needed to find another daycare provider. My father returned to the phone and began to scream at me once more. He was simply blowing hot air and not actually saying anything, so I just laughed at him. My mother retrieved the phone and begged me again. I restated $50, prepared food, Sundays only. And I would not think twice about calling the police if I received threats or had any of my belongings stolen. My parents began arguing loudly at one another about what to do. So I told them to figure it out and get back to me later. I hung up after that. For a time, radio silence returned. A few weeks later, I was getting ready for work on a Saturday morning when I heard a loud, quick knock at my door, the kind where you can tell they're using both hands. I've heard my mom knocking for years to let me know she was there, so I'm familiar with the sound. What sounded like someone rushing noisily along the hallway after the banging. Hearing my 2 youngest siblings arguing and tapping on the door themselves, I listened through the door. My mom had just run off, leaving them outside the door. I had a straightforward strategy for this. Because of all the warnings I received after my last post, I simply rolled down my window, got out, and left. I can easily climb out of the window by just ripping the screen out of my ground-level apartment. I contacted my neighbor, a kind elderly woman who enjoys having children, who lives a few doors down, and gave her the scoop. She has long been aware of my predicament with my narcissistic parents, and she phoned the police so I could inform them that 2 children were left in the hallway after their mother beat on a door and fled. Let's just say that my siblings were picked up by the cops. Later, I got a call from my parents, who were very upset. I asked them what they were so upset about, acting as though I had no idea. When I inquired if my mother had simply left my 2 youngest siblings at my door without anyone answering, she completely acknowledged that she had left them there for me to watch before running away. She explained that I was already out because I had to work on Saturdays. After a few moments of silence, my mother screamed, "How in the world was I meant to know that?" I retorted that she was solely to blame and that she had practically left her children at my door. Hoping that I might have been home on a day that I had previously informed her I worked on multiple occasions. By forcing me to watch them, she was attempting to make me miss a shift. She began offering justifications, but I told her that what she had done was unacceptable and immature. I waited for her to stop weeping for a while before asking if she was finished. She reverted to her hostile demeanor and kept shouting. She shouted that she was being charged with child abandonment by the police. She left the children in the hallway, so I replied, "That wasn't really my fault." Then I said that if I had been at home and she had refused to come back for the kids, I would have called the police on her too because I had already informed them that I now worked on Saturdays, and I didn't want to be forced to babysit anymore. She continued to argue pointlessly for the remainder of the call, which didn't really accomplish anything. In the end, my mom just received a fine and a slap on the wrist because she persuaded the police that she genuinely believed I was home. At least that's what my next sibling claimed when he contacted me. The fact that she had to pay a fine should make her reconsider leaving children at my door and fleeing again. But I'm not sure how much it was since my dad was at work and said he didn't know she was going to leave my brothers at my door. He wasn't charged. He was reportedly furious with my mother for doing it. I couldn't stop laughing at this pot and kettle scenario. However, I suppose I must give my old guy credit because he had never done what my mother did. In any case, my mom now has a police record, which is, in my opinion, a first strike in the eyes of the law. Thanksgiving was the turning point. After that, I was completely anticipating my parents' invitation to be a trap of some sort. It was too. My dad pretended to be in control while he sat at the table smoking a cigarette during supper. He said enough was enough and that he was ending this farce. After having my mom sit me down, he informed me that they had no more time for themselves and that the fine my mom had to pay had a significant negative financial impact, so I needed to return home, help with the bills and mortgage, and help raise my siblings. Regardless of how much he tried to command me, I just answered no, and I continued to do so. Even though he's a big man, he became so enraged that he actually attacked me. Fortunately, I'm not either, having acquired some amateur fighting techniques and been going to the gym for months. When he came at me, I kicked him quickly in the balls because I was wearing steel-toed boots, too, and then I struck him hard enough in the face that he fell to the ground in an instant. He landed with a loud thud and clutched his groin, vomiting from the pain. I then informed my parents that I could easily prove he attacked me first because I had my phone filming in my pocket the entire time. I complied with my dad's order to leave his house and never return, but not before stealing a turkey leg from the plate and riding home to eat it. The only people who have phoned or contacted me since are my siblings. I marched out like a boss, they claimed, and now Dad's purr balls are the subject of constant jokes in the house. I was invited to return for other holidays after spending Christmas with a friend's family. Update: my parents blamed me for losing the baby because my mom was pregnant. I now see why my parents attempted to have me return home for Thanksgiving. I have just learned that my mom was expecting her sixth kid. First of all, shortly after my last post, one of my siblings discovered my Reddit account and showed it to our parents. In response, my parents stormed into my apartment and yelled at me, accusing me of being a horrible parent and of arranging for my mom to be detained. Yes, they are standing in my doorway. I yelled at them for all they had done, including putting my siblings at my door on a day when they knew I was at work. In any case, that is poor parenting. I would have called the police on Mom when she left the kids at my door. So it didn't really matter that I set them up. It wouldn't have mattered in the end. I replied that behavior alone confirms my belief that they are bad parents. And my dad appeared to be about to raise a fist in my direction. Then he said that if he tried to hit me, it would end the same way it happened the last time, and I didn't think my boots, yes, I was wearing them, could hit his balls again when he remembered what I had done to him the last time. Dad appeared to wince and tense his legs together. In the end, he dragged my mother out by the hand and left. Before he left the corridor, he shouted back that since I was entirely to blame, he expected me to reimburse them for the fine they had to pay for child abandonment. I informed them that I owed them nothing and told them to off. They remained silent in response. I received some extremely horrible news not long ago after a terrible incident at home, where she tripped on damp porch stairs and fell face down in gravel. My mom, who was about 7 months pregnant, lost the baby. To be honest, when I saw her before that, I had no idea she had been pregnant. She's always been awkward and a little heavier than average, not fat, but just enough that it's hard to tell if she's pregnant or not. She definitely wanted someone to blame because this was her first miscarriage, which is heartbreaking. I destroyed the family by not assisting them and by costing them a lot of money, therefore, in her opinion, someone had to be me. She was on crutches when she and Dad returned to my place to accuse me of being the cause I didn't come home to help when they needed me, thus she lost the baby. I called them out on their attempts to blame me for something that wasn't my fault and their need for free childcare, which led to a quite heated debate. In any case, I assured them it's not my fault that they became pregnant again when Mom was 45. Dad was too frugal to ever replace or repair the decaying old porch, so blame it on it. When I said that, my father put his hands on me once more and gave me a stinging right hook. I ultimately kicked his ass again. After that, I've continued to train out at the gym and I've gotten stronger since defeating him during Thanksgiving last year. There was no chance for him. My mother's yelling forced me to stop when I lost my temper and broke his nose and knocked out both of his front teeth. My father needed to be transferred to the hospital, so the police called, and I was placed in handcuffs. Fortunately, my apartment complex's halls are equipped with CCTV, and I also had my phone camera recording behind me in my unit when my parents knocked. I began to record the video, which clearly demonstrated that I defended myself after my father hit me first. Since it was deemed self-defense, I'm basically safe. But now my parents want to sue me for my dad's medical fees and the fine they had to pay earlier. I defeated Dad, so he won't be able to go to work for a while. He has 2 lost teeth, a black eye, a broken nose, a neck brace, and who knows what else. He is also really upset that he had to shave off his beard. I suppose this makes him even more dead to me because I already thought he was pretty well dead before this. He no longer has the little authority he once believed he had as my father because of all the hard work I've put in over the past few months. I'm physically stronger than him and will soon be starting a new job that pays significantly more. I might be able to get a much better place to live after a few years of saving. When my oldest sibling became 19, they called to tell me that I was their hero for beating the living daylights out of Dad and that they were going to leave just like me. However, my parents found out about my posts once my next sibling discovered them after hearing about them on YouTube. My mother apparently forced them to show her my post after overhearing them discussing it. They stated she broke items because she was angry. My siblings have expressed regret for letting Mom and Dad know, and they claim that if they had realized Mom was listening, they would never have brought it up. Additionally, both have expressed their happiness that there won't be another child. They already have to handle a lot of my parents' babysitting, which they detest. They acknowledge that they first blamed me for leaving, but they now understand that you have the right to choose your own path as an adult. Whether my parents will actually attempt to sue me is still up in the air, but I believe I can state that if they do, it will be a loss for them. My friend's uncle is a lawyer, and he promised to defend me in the event that my parents filed a lawsuit. He adds that since it was self-defense, they don't have much of a case. To my folks, who will most likely see this, leave me alone. Please, that's all I have to say. My siblings and I are not your property, and I will assist them in leaving your home when they are old enough to do so, at the age of 19. Both of you have always been self-centered egotists. It's not my fault that Mom lost the baby, and it's not my fault that you struggled so much without me around to watch your kids for free. Think of that smashed nose and missing teeth as a good excuse to avoid me in the future. Remember that because of you too, I have only told you a small portion of the nonsense that occurred in my life. I could share story after story about the events in my early years if I so desired. However, I wouldn't be satisfied with it, so please don't bother me. P.S. Yes, my mom had to give birth to a stillborn baby at the hospital, but I wasn't going to bring it up earlier. According to my siblings, my parents had a secret funeral among themselves, and Mom brought home a little ear that she keeps in the bedroom. After leaving with the ear for a few hours, they returned intoxicated. My mom spent over 6 days in the hospital due to whatever injury she sustained in the fall. I've contacted my siblings for further information. Someone asked if she had been shoved. I'm now doubting that myself. The only excuse I could come up with was that Mom was in a hurry to be somewhere when she slipped and fell off the porch. I've heard of folks suffering more severe injuries in more foolish ways. When I researched the cremation procedure, I found that it would take 8 to 12 days to obtain the ashes. This indicates that the end they brought home was empty. I'm completely perplexed. However, my parents' funeral took place a few days after Mom left the hospital. Until the day of their small funeral, my parents kept that ear in the bedroom. They may have collected the ashes by then, I suppose. Perhaps it explains why they returned home intoxicated. But this situation is so strange and twisted that I'm having a hard time thinking about it anymore. Revisiting posting again so soon feels strange. I mentioned in my last post that my mom had a recent miscarriage following a serious fall. I had a bad feeling about the information I was given. I concluded that going directly to the source was the only way to obtain the truth after reading all of the comments I had gotten about it. I visited my parents on Sunday. They both appeared to be in terrible shape and were at home sleeping. In addition to using crutches to walk more than a few steps, my mom appeared to be very exhausted. I saw that she had numerous bruises and bandages on her face from the fall. A few steps from the door, my father, to find out how he appeared. Read my previous post's depiction of him following the thrashing I inflicted. When I arrived, my parents were blown away. I insisted on knowing if there was ever a baby or if this was all a pathetic attempt to coerce me into returning home after what happened. My dad claimed I had a lot of guts to show there and let myself in. However, my mother sobbed as she revealed that she had actually been pregnant. She stumbled into the bedroom and picked up a little ear that seemed really elaborate. It was filled with ashes. They didn't smell like anything, even when I looked to see if they resembled cigarette or barbecue ashes. I didn't really smell anything at all. Even though I had looked online and saw that it takes at least 8 to 12 days to get the ashes returned, I questioned why they brought the N home and said that the ashes were already inside. Mom had spent no more than 6 days in the hospital. According to my mom, they purchased the urn online with the hope of retrieving the baby's ashes. Upon visiting the crematorium, they simply waited till they could retrieve the ashes a few days later and then went out to get drunk because they were so distraught that they couldn't bring the kid home yet. Mom said she begged the crematorium to do things a little faster. Her eyes were filled with real tears, although I've witnessed her crocodile tears numerous times. This one didn't appear to be that. I learned more about my mother's fall and what transpired. She was late for her appointment with her physician, an OBGYN or whatever they are called. Mom clarified that she was attempting to get out to her appointment after oversleeping during her nap. Then, as she attempted to down the stairs, she slipped on a toy about 3 years ago. The porch's guard rails deteriorated and snapped off, and Dad never restored or repaired them. Mom had nothing to cling to, then she fell straight off the porch, hitting the ground with her face and belly first. She even showed me the marks from her landing all over her stomach. She informed me that the child would have been a male. There would have been one more brother in addition to my 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Then Mom told me that because of her age and past injuries, a doctor advised her not to try to conceive again, since her body might not be able to take it. It wasn't any easier to hear in person, but I kind of assumed that was the case after some individuals messaged me about it. At last, I posed the crucial query: why did she hold me responsible? Mom began to add something along the lines of the day they showed up at my apartment was just really, really bad, but Dad interrupted her. "It's all my fault," he screamed. "I would have been there to help if I had followed his advice and returned home for Thanksgiving, and now I'm responsible for the death of a baby." I screamed back at him, telling him that he was to blame, since Mom might not have fallen if he had actually bothered to fix the porch. Furthermore, not that it would have made a difference. He didn't even bother to inform me that Mom was expecting back at Thanksgiving. Instead of taking sides, my mother simply left the room in tears as we kept ranting at one another. My dad was so red that he looked like a lit match. He shouted for me to leave his house and waved his ancient hunting knife at me. He told me I was no longer his son. As I was leaving, he was always a bad father, so I informed him that I hadn't seen him as a father in years. I told him before I left that I would be requesting a restraining order, and that he would have to deal with the authorities the next time he attempted to harm my siblings in the same way that he had done me. He will lose more than a few teeth, and if he attempts the same nonsense with my siblings as he did with me, I won't think twice about calling the police or CPS. He swore at me from the front door, saying things like, "You son of a..." I retorted that that was a slight to Mom, and he became enraged once more. After that, I saluted him with one finger and rode off on my mountain bike. So, I suppose that's the best response I can give someone. I'm not sure what the truth is if this isn't it. Does it matter now, though? As soon as possible, I'm going to file for a restraining order. And once I start earning money from my new work, I'll be seeking to transfer apartments. After this, I'm not sure whether I'll feel like updating again unless my parents do something horrible to my siblings. I think I might be done here since I'm just going to be depressed thinking about all of this. I hope I've made my message clear to them. Even though I've already given Dad 2 beatings, he still held that knife with a hint of fear. He thought he was staring at a monster. Perhaps he views me as a monster, but if that means he never harms my siblings, then that's okay, sir. He will be the monster. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My biological mother organized my birthday celebration around her stepdaughter's favorite pastimes, and I laughed in her face when I was 6 years old. My parents divorced and went their own ways. They both started new families, although they obviously shared custody of me. My mother married a man, let's call him Robert, when I was 9 years old. He already had a daughter, Kira, who was 2 years my senior. When I was 8 years old, my dad proposed to Lila, a lovely woman, and they were married when I was 12. Lila and I have a great friendship. For me, she has been a real mother. She essentially assisted my dad in raising me, showed interest in my life, offered consolation, counseled me, and we had things in common together. We engaged in a variety of activities. She and I just discussed the prospect of her legally adopting me when I reach adulthood. Since my parents share custody, doing so today might be a little complicated legally. But I wanted to be formal because she is my real mother. In contrast, I have virtually little relationship with my biological mother. I was made to spend some days with her, but we were never able to connect since Kira already had her own mother. She devoted all of her time to showing her love and care. Kira was always involved in activities, even when my mom tried to include me, and we only did things that she enjoyed. I eventually began turning down her invites and frequently asked if I might skip seeing her on the designated days. I preferred to stay at home with my father and Lila because I was nearly always disregarded or left out. Although he had to follow the judge's guidelines, my father always made an effort to understand me. As I grew older, he acknowledged that he was worried that if he allowed me to skip the visits, my mother may pursue some nasty legal action. My mom was probably going to do this. I didn't want to cause my father any trouble after hearing this because I understood his motivations. I stopped requesting things like that and complied with the timetable. Let's go right to the subject now. My 18th birthday is in 2 weeks. Fortunately, my birthday coincides with the days I'm supposed to be with my dad. Thus, a month ago, he, Lila, and I began organizing my birthday. Nothing too extravagant. Just a get-together with loved ones at my favorite pizza joint, a laid-back evening where I can enjoy myself and the people I care about. I enjoy singing, and the place provides karaoke. We invited everyone, including my mother. After making reservations and organizing everything, to be honest, I didn't really want her there. But I reasoned that since I won't be bound by the judge's regulations once I turn 18, this might be the only time I had to include her in order to finalize the guest list for the pizza establishment. We sent out the invites 2 days ago and have already received the majority of the responses. My mother was the only one who hadn't replied. I told my dad that I wouldn't press the issue because I was okay with her not wanting to come if she didn't reply. Although he didn't express it publicly, I believe my dad was also a little relieved. This afternoon was when the drama began. In a furious phone call, my mother accused me of being immature and advised me to never make plans without first informing her. She frequently forgot my birthday, so it was hypocritical of her to complain. Now I was perplexed and reminded her that I've always planned my birthdays with Dad and Lila. She became very furious as a result, claiming Kira had been crying ever since she saw the invitation. She began to attack me. Kira had apparently already organized an entire birthday celebration for me. I couldn't speak. There is no relationship between Kira and me. She is the quintessential pampered brat who craves attention, and my mother has always encouraged this behavior, which has made it worse. We've never had a good relationship. Why Kira would want to plan a birthday celebration for me was beyond me. It was illogical. She didn't tell me why she did it, so I asked her. She didn't really expect me to have no plans for my 18th birthday, did she? It was absurd. According to my mother, it was meant to be a surprise. And she assumed I didn't want to do anything for my birthday because I hadn't told her about my intentions. She could have just asked. After all, the worst part though, the one that made me lose my temper, is about to happen. Perhaps in an attempt to make me feel bad about what I would have missed. My mother began to detail everything Kira had arranged for my celebration. Kira's favorite hobby was everything, even the things I didn't enjoy. For instance, she had made lunch reservations at a fish restaurant. I avoid eating fish because it makes me sick, not because I'm impulsive. Even though I've had it checked, my body just rejects it. I'm not allergic. She also organized an afternoon event at a horseback riding ranch close to the city where my mom currently resides. Horses don't appeal to me. I'm afraid of riding them or being around something that large, but it's not that I don't enjoy them as creatures. The final plan was to return to my mom's house for a barbecue meal in the backyard. I simply didn't want to see my mother more than was absolutely required. Furthermore, my mother added that invitations had already been sent out. I was stunned at this moment since none of my pals, my dad, or his family had gotten anything. I had to inquire as to who they had shipped them to. It turned out that the majority of the people on the guest list were Kira's friends, Robert's family, and my mother's family. Under the guise of celebrating my birthday, Kira essentially planned a party for herself. I was unable to contain myself any longer. I hung up the phone after laughing in my mother's face. The entire situation was too absurd to be real. After a little while, my dad approached me and told me that my mom had phoned him because I had made fun of her. He became agitated and began telling me that they were attempting to be kind for once. Regardless of how I felt about my mother, I immediately stopped him and gave him the party specifics, which my mother had reportedly forgotten. His face shifted rapidly. I've been listening to him rage at my mother for the past 20 minutes or more, and he just said, "I'm going to make a phone call." When Lila heard about the issue, she came to me. She acknowledged my point of view but suggested that laughing in my mother's face and hanging up wasn't the most responsible way to react. She wasn't upset, but she was a little let down that I hadn't handled it more politely. I thought about what I had done after she had gone. I don't think discussing it with my mother would have helped. But perhaps I was a bit harsh. I could have handled it better, though I am beginning to believe that I may have been a bit of a jerk at that time. In all honesty, though, what did she anticipate? That I would bow down and take the scraps that were thrown to me? She was obviously not thinking at all, as usual. She was simply following Kira's lead. The problem is that individuals like that depend on others to comply without protest. They are unable to cope with the inevitable counterattack. Was I able to be more courteous? Yes, most likely. Was my response entirely warranted? Oh, of course. To any stranger on the internet who might be reading this, I'm proud that I defended myself. I've developed strong bonds with my father and stepmother, and I'm really proud of myself for resisting my mother's foolishness. I hope you have a wonderful birthday. What about my mother? If I decide to stop communicating with her after my birthday, she's going to have a terrible awakening. To be honest, it's advantageous to all parties. I can appreciate Lila's perspective. But there's no reason to hold back if your parents don't accept you at almost 18. Updated. I first discussed my response to my mother with Lila. Lila has consistently stressed the value of communication and urged me to discuss my issues in order to find solutions. I realized the context of her remark regarding my actions. But I also expressed my opinion to her, telling her that I was laughing because it was the only natural response I had to the situation my mother was describing, which was too ridiculous. I honestly wondered at one point, is this a joke or some kind of nasty prank? Is she inventing this due to the fact that her foolishness was completely absurd? Although she acknowledged my viewpoint, Lila warned me that there will be times in life when I can't just chuckle and end the call. She was concerned about how I would respond and wanted to teach me how to deal with such circumstances in the future. I'm glad we had a conversation and were able to resolve the issue. I also discussed my dad's phone conversation with my mother. My mother apparently had a reason for everything. She said that Kira wanted to share her love of horseback riding with me. That she wanted to make a nice sisterly gesture on my special day, and that she didn't think my dislike of fish was a serious problem, just a whim. She even defended the fish restaurant by claiming that the fish they provided was the best in town. I threw up multiple times in front of her as a child just because I was around areas that smelled strongly of fish, so that last excuse was a flagrant lie. She is well aware that I have a serious problem with it. My father said that had obviously arranged the celebration for herself, and that nothing they had prepared was done for me. He made the point that if none of my significant others were invited, it wasn't a party for me. Instead of reacting to this, my mother started to complain about how pampered and ungrateful I was. My dad then hung up the phone and told her to go to hell. I took another piece of advice from all of you after hearing this, and I wrote a letter to my mother. I decided to be mature this time and write it as courteously as I could. I stated I was sorry for laughing, but I explained that my only natural response to what she said was to laugh since it was so absurd. I reminded her that she doesn't know me at all, has never cared to get to know me, and never made an attempt to establish a relationship with me. I pointed out that they could enjoy the birthday celebration with their family and friends because it was full of things that Kira liked. Additionally, I informed her that her actions made it plain what her priorities were, so I rescinded her invitation to my pizza party and advised her not to bother attending. I said she wasn't on my list of priorities, which I now possess. I informed her that I was already very happy having Lila as my mother. I asked her not to get in touch with me again and wished her well with her new family. I don't mind that she didn't reply after reading the message. She would have likely complained more about how spoiled and ungrateful I am if she had responded. She either doesn't understand or acts as though she doesn't, so there's no need in talking to her. But I feel more at peace now that I've made my feelings clear, and this scenario is over. I'm grateful to everyone for assisting me in seeing that a definitive conclusion was required. My dad questioned my mom about how she could have thrown me a surprise party when I wasn't around. He also questioned how she could have believed that he wouldn't celebrate my 18th birthday. She clarified that Robert had made plans to come collect me on the morning of my birthday, but my dad took it a little personally, lol. Under false pretenses. They planned to take me to my mother's house and explain the situation to Dad and Lila. To be honest, I have no idea how they anticipated this defunct tie-on. No matter what reason they came up with. I would have flatly refused to visit my mom's house if it hadn't been her planned day. Above all, I would never have left Lila and Dad to celebrate my 18th birthday at my mother's house. A positive relationship between my mother and I would have been one thing, but that was certainly not the case. Robert is the only one I don't feel like blaming in all of this. Even though we were never close, he was always courteous to me when we shared a home. When I went to my mother's house, he even cleared out his study to give me a permanent place in his home. I don't blame him for anything because he always tried to be nice to me. Even though we didn't form a stepdaughter-stepfather tie, he probably sincerely believes that the party is for me. We aren't close enough for him to understand my preferences unless my mother informed him, which I doubt she did. Fortunately, nothing of mine was left at my mother's place. My father's residence is where I keep all of my possessions. When I went to my mother's, I would usually fill my bag with the things I would need for the day and bring them back when I went to my father's. Because Kira's friends and Robert's family frequently visited, I never felt comfortable leaving anything with her because I didn't want my possessions in plain sight of strangers. That's about it for now. I hope my mother respects my decision to stop communicating with me and stops bothering me following the holidays. I would like to discuss the adoption with Lila. When we first discussed it, she appeared to be really happy. Once again, I want to thank everyone for their wisdom and nice thoughts. Your advice has improved my situational management. Although I acknowledge that I'm still a little immature, I believe this experience has allowed me to evolve and see the problem from a variety of angles. Best wishes to you. Yes. I considered contacting Robert, but I don't have his phone number since most of our meetings were friendly greets and light conversation. We never felt the need to stay in touch. The last time I left my mother's place, I believe Robert and I said our final goodbyes because I don't have Kira's number either. I don't spend a lot of time with my mother's relatives. My grandma, my aunt, and my uncle are the only three individuals involved. I've only seen my uncle a few times over the holidays when I'm spending time with my mother because he and his family reside a few hours away. Every time we interacted, it was short and far away. I only have friendly contact with my grandmother and aunt. They have given me money as birthday presents using my father's card, and we text each other holiday pleasantries, but that's about it. Even when we have met, Our discussions have been informal and have only been exchanging life updates. They haven't texted me since the incident with my mother. And I didn't ask any of them until my 18th birthday. I believe they simply don't give a damn. Let's go on to the second tale. Before anyone told me directly, my wife's friend's Instagram account revealed our pregnancy, causing a flurry of activity and tears. She is 27, and I am 29. We both hail from the same hometown, but we currently reside in different cities. We have been dating for 4 years and married for 2. Because of work, I stayed behind while she attended a family gathering in our hometown. It finally happened after 3 months of trying to conceive. The manner I learned about it is the issue in our group conversation. My friend thanked me by sharing a screenshot of an Instagram story that one of my wife's friends had shared. "You're going to be the best mom," was the caption on the photo, which included my wife sobbing and embracing a few of her pals. I immediately contacted her, and she picked up right away, saying, "I have news, babe." I only said, "I know you're pregnant." "Wow. Babe, how did you know?" she asked. I simply answered, "I saw it on Instagram." Didn't think to give me a call first. "What?" she asked. I said, "Yeah, but your friends posted something." "I didn't. That's one way to know I'll become a father." I said, "Thank you," and hung up. I was enraged. She called repeatedly, but I didn't pick up until my sister called a short while later. My sister had just arrived at my in-laws' house, where everyone was fighting and panicking, and my wife was confined in her room, so she asked me what was going on. She exclaimed, "There's no way she would do that." When I told her what had happened, "Well, she did," I said. My sister promised to investigate the situation. She gave me a call back a little while later and gave me all the details. I had cooled down by then, and assumed it was just a bad buddy who had chosen to post without authorization. However, my sister gave me the specifics. My wife was apparently having a late period, and while she was visiting a friend, they asked, "What if you're already pregnant?" They purchased numerous pregnancy tests, each of which produced good results. They emailed some local acquaintances to invite them over after becoming alerted and telling her parents. Just 2 hours had gone by between the time she learned and the moment her buddy shared the information on Instagram before telling me. My wife told 10 or more individuals. For the record, when my sister came, she informed me that the reason for the disagreement was that the other friends were angry with the person who had posted on Instagram. Evidently, they were all upset with her and felt that was a horrible thing to do. However, they were equally baffled as to why my wife hadn't informed me earlier. When I eventually contacted my wife, she was in tears. She apologized and explained that she hadn't told me yet since she had been preparing to surprise me. I expressed skepticism, pointing out that she wouldn't have been prepared to tell me at the same moment I called if she had truly intended to surprise me. I told her I needed some time to reflect. When she fell silent, she screamed that we needed to discuss it and that I couldn't just leave. "Why do we need to talk?" I answered. "So you can tell lies once more." And I ended the call. I've received a ton of messages, but I'm really worn out. I'm exhausted. Edit. I didn't think much of posting this in the Reddit void, but when I woke up, I saw thousands of comments and dozens of direct messages. Holy. I sincerely appreciate your concern. Just to make a few points clear, is it possible that the baby is not mine? No chance. Classic Reddit, lol. She works from home. But that isn't possible because our house is equipped with home security cameras. Girls' nights are not something she does. I work with a female coworker who happens to be her best friend in the city where we live, and the three of us frequently hang out. They rarely spend time together in person, but they frequently text one another. If they do, I'll be in the adjacent room at our house. The clingiest person on the planet is my wife. She texts me every 30 minutes while I'm at work. She's usually in the same room as me or cuddling up to me when we're at home. She holds my hand or arm when we're out most of the time. I genuinely enjoy it. I feel appreciated. However, it could be excessive. I even asked whether the argument we had weeks ago was the reason she didn't inform me straight away. However, it most likely isn't. Regarding her buddies, they are all really kind individuals. They've been in my life for a while. Some of the people in my sister's friend group have known each other since they were 12 years old. The only person who lives in a distant city is my wife. When she is in town, they always spend a lot of time together. I can't stress enough how completely out of character this is for her. Like everyone else, she has numerous shortcomings, but being careless is not one of them. She wouldn't intentionally do this. Which is why I woke up in the middle of the night with the thought that I could be mistaken. No way. I texted her to let her know that everything was good and that I would make the 4-hour drive down there to speak with her. In fact, she asked if she might call when she was awake. After doing so, she expressed her desire to return home. I informed her that I will be picking her up. Are we all right? She questioned. She broke down in tears as soon as I said yes. I informed her that we would have to discuss it, but that I was thrilled and eager to meet her. After that, she became a little more composed. Update 1. Hi there once more. I'm here to give you an update now that everything has calmed down, and I believe I have all the facts. My wife waited for me on the sidewalk when I arrived at my in-laws' house. She threw herself at me, apologized repeatedly, and simply gave me a hug while expressing her regret. Before our conversation, I told her I was quite exhausted and wanted to take a nap. When we got to her room, we held each other while we slept. When we woke up, our conversation felt like a never-ending cycle in which I asked her what had happened. And she responded that she was foolish and to blame. She insisted that since she had ruined a significant event in our lives, it didn't matter what occurred. She simply reiterated that she made a mistake and that nothing else mattered. When I persisted in inquiring, she finally admitted that she didn't want to make excuses for me and that accepting responsibility and offering an apology was the proper course of action. After a while, I gave in and told her that everything was okay and that she was forgiven. Nevertheless, I wanted to speak with her buddy who spent the entire day with her and purchased the pregnancy test for her. According to the friend's narrative, they freaked out for an hour and discussed how to surprise or tell me when my wife tested positive. When my mother-in-law finally arrived home, they all told her to talk about how to inform me. They made the decision to bring a few girlfriends around. The friend discussed all of their opinions, and I completely agree with her. She added that the group had discussed it, which I was unaware of at the time, and that they should all be silent since we hadn't chosen when to make the announcement. It seems that the one girl who shared it on Instagram did it intentionally. At that time, they were even talking about methods to tell me with her there, even though she had been instructed not to speak when she uploaded the photo. Another buddy had just arrived and was informed of the situation. She immediately decided to publish about it. For what reason? She first said she was unaware that she was not permitted to post it. When they approached her after maintaining that falsehood for some time, she just told everyone she didn't give a damn and walked away. We haven't heard from her since. She blocked everyone in the group. Whether she was jealous of my wife or something else, no one knows why she did it. Right now, we don't give a damn. We too have her blocked, and we do not wish to communicate with her. The friend's account was later verified by my sister. She thought my wife had just told everyone and had forgotten to tell me when she originally called me with the details. However, after speaking with my mother-in-law and other friends, she shared the same tale with me. In addition, my mother-in-law, the friend I spoke with, and another acquaintance informed me that when I phoned my wife, she essentially said, "Screw it. I'm telling him right now." And she was quite eager to do so. During our return ride home, my wife and I spoke once more. Although I already knew the majority of the details, her side of the story was much the same as what my sister and the buddy told me. She apologized profusely once more and insisted that I was her top priority, and that this was one of the worst things she had ever done. At her urging, we have a couples counseling session scheduled for next week. She feels that I need a place to completely express my thoughts, even though I don't think it's necessary. She fears that I'm holding everything inside and that I forgave her too quickly. To be honest, I'm already willing to forgive her and put this as a one-time incident because she cares about my sentiments. Additionally, we made our first visit to an obstetrician. Not just because it's the correct thing to do, but also because I was warned by many about the dangers of miscarriages in the first trimester of pregnancy. The doctor indicated it was a little early for an appointment, and my wife's last period was approximately 6 weeks ago. However, after conducting numerous tests, they were able to determine that my wife is definitely pregnant. Everything appears to be going okay so far. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.